Avenue Baptist Church.
Let's pray. Father, as we gather together this evening, we praise you for another day and the purposes that you have in it. God, we thank you for all of the blessings that you pour out on us. God, we thank you for the blessings of this country. Lord, we thank you for the military, for those that are in armed service that defend the freedoms that we enjoy and the blessings that we enjoy. God, we thank you for the institution of government and those men and women who give of their time, they give of their talents to serve in it. And God, even with all of these blessings, we readily admit that life's circumstances can become heavy and all-consuming. God, I'm sure even in this room, our heart breaks for some of the things that we see going around this country and around the world. God, we want to pause for just a minute and commit this world to you. God, I know even in this room, everyone here carries with them their burdens and their stresses. God, there's a lot of hurt and struggles that are represented in the lives of this room. And so, Lord, we ask that whether it be financial or whether it be health-related, God, if it be relational, Lord, we know that all of these can be painful and all can be distracting. So, God, we ask for your wisdom. We ask for your peace. And, God, as the City Council meeting convenes at this time, I pray that these concerns of the day might be set aside and replaced with your understanding, with your peace, so that the decisions that can be made can be full of wisdom, and, God, that they might be decided based on what is in the best interest of the citizens of this great city. God, we ask for your blessing on this time. We entrust it to you. God, again, we thank you for this council and the time that they set aside to serve this city. And God, we ask that you would honor them because they have chosen to take the first minute of this meeting to honor you. So right now, Lord, we entrust this time and these people, the mayor, the council members, and the leaders to you, asking for your blessings on them and on their families. And Lord, we thank you for your love to us. We thank you for your goodness to us. And Lord, we thank you for freely giving us wisdom to any who ask. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please call the roll.
Oh, I apologize. Ms. Franson? Here. Ms. Hoover? Here. Ms. Royce? I'm here. Mr. Kelch?
Here.
Mrs. Winterbauer? Here. Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Mr. Brady?
Here. All members present. Moving on to item E, amendment of agenda. We have one item to add this evening. We are adding item L4, which is resolution declaring June 2022 to be Pride Month in the city of Norwood. And that is my only amendment to the agenda. May I have a motion? Mr. Thompson.
I move we amend the agenda as you stated.
Motion by Mr. Thompson. May I have a second? Mrs. Winterbauer.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Winterbauer. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, ma'am. All members present voting aye. The motion passes. Moving on to item F, minutes of previous meeting, May 10th, 2022. Mrs. Hoover.
I move to approve the minutes as of read.
Motion by Mrs. Hoover to approve the minutes as of read. Mrs. Franson.
I second.
Second by Mrs. Franson. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, ma'am. All members present voting aye. Motion passes. Moving on to item H, request to address council. This evening, we are pleased to introduce the Salvation Army Rehab Program, Mission and Program Happenings, Captain Kenneth Cleveland, Administrator, and Todd Johnson, Intake Coordinator. Gentlemen.
Well, good evening to the mayor, to the great council people. We thank you for allowing us to come this evening to introduce ourselves. My name is, first and foremost, my name is Captain Kenneth Cleveland. I am the administrator for the Salvation Army Rehabilitation Program in Norwood, located at 2250 Park Avenue. We are an 85-bed facility, and as you know, that service is mostly men. Now, we do have some facilities that do service men and women. It's just not our facility with the Salvation Army. As you guys know, the opioid epidemic, or should I say pandemic, is really very prevalent, not only in this country, but also in the state of Ohio, and particularly in the Cincinnati area. It affects every aspect of our lives. It affects not only the city, it affects the rural, it affects the workplaces, it affects everything. And our job here is we really want to give the men's lives back, help them reclaim their lives, their families, help them have a better way of life, and help them beat the evil disease of addiction. Todd Johnson, my intake coordinator, he's really going to come and explain a little bit more how our program works and why we do what we do. So I'm going to introduce Todd.
Good evening. The Salvation Army has been doing this for 125 years. We're probably one of the oldest recovery programs in the world, maybe next to some Catholic charities, but started back in the turn of the last century. We started working with alcoholics in England, and it moved over to here. We are a long-term facility. We ask the guys to try to commit to 6 months with us, but if they want to stay longer, they can stay up to a year with us working on themselves. One of the reasons long-term is we want to get beyond the drugs and alcohol problem to the reasons why they're using drugs and alcohol. Drugs and alcohol start out as a symptom to something else, why they're picking up. They later become a disease when it takes over their lives. So we want to get them beyond just dealing with the drugs and alcohol to start working on their character, changing, finding out why are you using, what caused this. What we find with most individuals, there is some trauma that goes along with this. And we try to start to deal with that, change their behaviors, not just stopping the drink and drug, but changing all aspects of their life. We are faith-based. We won't deny that. We are faith-based. If you go to NA or AA, you'll know that they always talk about a higher power. And if we always tell the guys, if you could have done this on your own, you wouldn't be here. You need something greater than yourself to tap into. And we try to teach them that kind of stuff. Although we are faith-based and Christian, we accept Jews, Muslims, atheists. Everybody's been through our program, and we don't disqualify anybody. We want to help whoever it is that needs. They will attend Bible studies. They will attend church with us. We try to hook them back up with their local churches too as they get through the program. To graduate our program, we ask them to have a job, have a sponsor, and have a safe place to live. When they graduate, if they graduate, because as you guys know, it's a very difficult ministry. It's difficult. Many people struggle the rest of their lives with it. But when they do get their certificate, if they've done a good program, we will allow them to stay an extra 2 months free room and board so they can build up money to get their own place. We also try to push them into maybe sober living instead of going right back out into the world. It seems to be that they're a little bit more successful if they go to another place. It still has gives them a little more freedom, but still accountability that if they mess up, they're going to lose a place to stay. So it just gives them that extra little bit to keep them going along. It takes about 2 years for the brain to begin to get back to normal. So even at 6 months, putting them back out on the street, they have all those cravings and everything. That's why we try to hold on to them as long as we can. So as I explained, it's a long-term residential program. They'll get an individual counselor as well as group counseling through NA, AA, Celebrate Recovery. It is a work therapy program. We believe in the dignity of the individual, and that work gives them dignity. It also, for many of them who have been on the streets for a long time, they're not used to getting up and learning how to deal with getting up at a regular time, going to work, dealing with other people, dealing with bosses. We don't want to take all the stresses of life away from them because when they graduate our program, they're going to be going back out into it. And so if we took it all away from them and then said, okay, congratulations, and put them back out on the street, then all of a sudden the world hits them. So we're trying to make them as successful as possible. So we do work therapy with them where they can learn how to, as I said, deal with other people, the stress of working with others, working with a boss, but in a safe environment where they can talk to their counselor, they can talk in the NA meetings, AA meetings. In fact, many of the people that we hire have graduated the program. So when they're down there working, they're working with people who understand what they're going through. That this isn't just work, but that this is the therapy, and they're there to help them deal with the struggles. They understand the struggles. And so we have that around. Many times we hire a lot of them, as I said, to stay on, and a lot of them want to stay with us because they still want to prolong that time to get stronger before they go back out in the world. But we accept people. We're trying to work with the parole offices, the county probation offices, the police. We're trying to do everything we can to help this community recover as much as possible. As we stated, the stuff on the street, and right now fentanyl is out there really bad. There's 2 new drugs on the market that is even stronger than that fentanyl now. Of course, you heard about the one, I think it's called ICS, that killed the West Point cadets down in Florida a few months ago. So right now it is very dangerous to be on the street. You don't know when that's going to be your last hit, and they're putting it in everything from heroin to marijuana. I had one guy come to me, and he was trying to get in our program, and said, he said, I even asked my dealer, and he was buying marijuana, does this have fentanyl in it? And he said, no. Are you sure it doesn't have fentanyl in it? He said, yes, I'm sure. He said, the next thing I knew, I woke up in the hospital, I had OD'd. So it is very dangerous. In your packet, you'll see we've put some items in there, a little flyer explaining the program, our mission and statement, and little brochures. And plus, we put a flyer in there also. If you know of any place that would want to put this up, there's some tears off at the bottom. And, for the people, if they're going by. This affects every family. I'm sure probably some of you have had people in your family dealing with drugs and alcohol too and trying to recover. So that's everything I have to say. Does anybody have any questions? Yes,
Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't really have a question. I have a comment. I didn't write your names down. I apologize. It doesn't diminish the respect I have for both of you here today. Or I'll address you by your name, sir. But I just wanted to share my experience that you haven't mentioned. I have so much respect for this program. I do know people personally has been through this program, and it's such a wonderful thing. But what you have not mentioned, that I want to mention, is, growing up here, I grew up 2 blocks away, and I've been here my entire life. I was born 2 blocks away from here, and I have been going to this Salvation Army for years. As a child, my mother was a single mom, and she struggled with me and my sister, and we would go to the Salvation Army for shoes, for clothes, for furniture, and that assisted us. My mother, she gave us a great life. She was, we didn't have nothing, and my dad left when I was 3. So the Salvation Army not only does we're doing the Lord's work here. That's why I just wanted to make a comment.
Thank you.
I have so much respect for that, and I know people that flourished from this, and also that this is the meaning of community right here. So I just want to thank you guys for coming in today. I don't have any questions. I just wanted to share that with everyone here today, that this place has helped my family personally and come out of poverty that we were in, and thank God that I've done well for myself. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you both for coming in. And
I might add that we do not take any money from the federal government. The thrift stores that you see around this area, that pays for the program. So anybody that wants to come in, it's free of charge. You don't have to have insurance. You don't have to have an ID or anything. Just come to us and we'll take you in. Okay? So if you just let them know that we're usually the people that come to us have worked through all their insurance and everything down to when we finally get them. And so we just say, we open our doors and say, just come on in. We'll help you. And as long as they're willing to learn and try something new, we'll work with everybody that we can. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
One last thing though too, I wanted to say, if you guys, you're welcome to come over. We welcome all judges, council people, anybody to come over, take a tour of the building and see exactly what we're about. Thank you guys.
For lunch.
Yep, actually, we had a great cook.
They gained weight in the program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I know your program here focuses only on men. Is there another program nearby, if we knew someone who's a woman, that would be a good place to refer to them?
Sure. We used to have two in the state of Ohio. We had one actually, Dayton. We closed Dayton about a year and a half, 2 years ago. So most of your centers would be like Philadelphia.
Okay.
I think Harrisburg is definitely the closest one. Places like that on the East Coast, which you have co-ed, men and women.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I do know the Salvation Army, they're trying to work on their first all-women's facility. I don't know when they're going to roll it out, but they are trying their best to do that.
Okay, thank you.
So we definitely could refer. Yep.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next request to address council, Ms. Virginia Patterson.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the City of Norwood City Council for considering the resolution for June 19th for the City of Norwood. I'd also like to thank Mayor Victor Schneider and Michael Gabbard from the Norwood Recreation for your support. We appreciate Ken Miracle, who will be standing in for the mayor during the flag raising ceremony. This year's theme is recognizing the founding fathers of freedom, the United States Colored Troops. The troops were made of African American as well as other minorities. These troops traveled around certain states notifying slaves about their freedom after Abraham Lincoln signed into law to outlaw slavery. The Juneteenth Committee and the Norwood Recreation Committee, we have collaborated for 2-day celebrations throughout the city. We are kicking off Friday night, June 17th, that is sponsored by PLK. It's going to be a Jazz in the Park with the band Sound the Alarm at Victory Park, and that will be from 6 to 8 p.m. Saturday, we will have the flag raising, and when you do your vote tonight for the resolution, that will be at City Hall at 10 a.m. We will also have a Paint and Simp Juneteenth edition at the Norwood Recreation Center at 1 o'clock, and then we will also conclude the evening on Saturday with a pool party at Waterworks with a guest DJ from 5 to 8, and there's a $5 admission. So I'm really excited for the city of Norwood and good things to come with celebrating Juneteenth. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Hoover.
Oh,
Ma'am?
Mrs. Patterson.
quick question.
She had a quick question.
do you have that printed out that we can share that far and wide?
Yes, the Norwood, Mr. Gabbard from the Norwood Recreation
He's putting that together?
Department, they are putting all that packaging together because they have the followers on Facebook and can
Fantastic.
get the word out and all that great stuff for the
Thank you very
celebration.
much that's a lot of work, a lot of work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next request to address council, Bishop Sonny James.
Good evening, everyone. Bishop Sonny James at 1830 Hopkins Avenue, right here in Norwood. Want to say that my son, Boom Boom, had a wonderful walk that he introduced you all to. It was just beautiful, a gathering of all races, all ages, all health situations. They had some dogs out there walking. It was really, really nice. And I got the pleasure of running folks in the car to and from the bathroom or out because it was too hot, and taking some of the seniors in. So they kept me busy as well. I really want to compliment, you know, people say, well, he does all the fussing. Yeah, that's true. But the Bible tells us to give honor to whom honor is due. And recently, I was called by the Norwood Police Department. There was a situation there in the lobby with an African-American man. And I was asked if I could come in and help with the situation. that I did. I was honored to do so. And I want to report to you all that today that gentleman started a job at $19.62 an hour. No problems. Nothing bad happened. And I want to commend our police department, Spilly and some of the others that, had the hindsight to make the call. See, because the whole thing, guys, is we are peers. And the reality is, certain people bring a certain vernacular to the table that you just can't go to a training and get it and understand it and know how to work it. It's a life's journey. And that's what my life has been, a journey. But it's always geared to helping those who sometimes need a very sensitive understanding. And so that was a huge success for Norwood. And I'm so honored and humbled that I was called to participate in that. And it's ironic because in the last month I've been spending more times with a legal team and going from here to Dayton to Columbus and spending a lot of time and hopefully building the Legal Fairness Foundation, in which I hope that the home city for that would be Norwood. And so as I've been doing all of this extra training, I'm just like looking around at my own city, and I'm really, really amazed to see how no matter how many struggles we've had, the bottom line is we're coming together and we're trying to make things right. We're trying to address tough issues. I was so excited today to come in and to see Mrs. Hoover addressing a diversity, launching a diversity platform, which we've tried to address that and got kind of detained because of my vernacular or whatever. But I'm so pleased to see how we can work through things. And I want to just say, a couple of weeks ago we were talking about Mrs. Hammock. And I want to apologize to some of the residents who may have misunderstood. Yes, I was very angry at how, looking at the faces of some of my leaders, looking at the smirks and how we approached it. Well, the other day I had the pleasure of talking to some of those same residents. And I had the pleasure of talking with Mrs. Hammock and addressing some serious issues that I know all of you have been aware of. And I didn't sugarcoat it. The neighbors came out and there proceeded to be a yelling match. And I just said, excuse me, I'm not here to yell at my neighbors. And I told Mrs. Hammock, and likewise, I didn't come here to hear you yell at them. We've got to be able to talk to each other, guys. And the issues that we have are going to be addressed, but it doesn't mean that we always have to be at each other. So I want to commend how I'm starting to see that we can work together. And I don't know if she's still here, but I'm so excited to hear that we've got a Juneteenth celebration. We've just celebrated our second Martin Luther King march here in Norwood. We did our Black History parade, and so it looks like we're moving forward. My son is coming back from the Marines before he ships off for Marine police training, I guess, for several months. But he comes back June 10th, and I would like your help and support to have a parade for my son. Because as you know, he does want to be an officer here in Norwood, and I think it's only fitting. And then finally, this Saturday starts the youth and their businesses. Many of you have heard the Youth of Elevations, and boy, they've got some awesome products. They're going to be right out there in BP parking lot and really just waving flags and just encouraging everybody to support. So please come out between, I think it's 11 and 6 p.m. There and come and support the youth. But guys, let's just keep up the good work. Let's just keep working together. We can work through all these issues if we just continue to come together, come to the table and talk. God bless you.
That was our last request to address council, so we'll move on to item I, reports of standing committees of council. We don't have any to report this evening. We don't have any third or second readings, so we'll move right into item L, introductory reading of ordinance and resolutions. L1, ordinance approving the Sixth Amendment to the detailed financial plan for the city of Norwood and declaring an emergency. Mr. Thompson.
Would move that we suspend the rules and have all three readings of this ordinance.
Motion by Mr. Thompson to suspend the rules and have all three readings. Mr. Brady.
I second that.
Second by Mr. Brady. Any discussion? Mr. Thompson.
I'd like to invite Jim Stitt to let us know what has been updated with this latest version of the financial plan for the city.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The state had some specific requests, and some of the major changes that you're going to see is really more detail and a more fleshed out narrative in the beginning, and the assumptions, going into more detail in the description in the first section before you get to actually all the accounting. That gives a little more detail as to changes that are made and how these assumptions affect the actual numbers. So from a major standpoint, there's probably about an extra 30% that's been added in detail describing where the numbers come from. Initially, there was a concern, the difference between the previous version and this version. There was some change that we made to the insurance cost, where we were on an 18-month insurance plan for the first time starting last year. Meaning we're starting with a new plan in June of this year, or July 1st of this year, as opposed to January 1st, because we were on an 18-month plan. So there'll be an increase for the second half of this year, but then that will also be an 18-month plan that'll carry all the way through next year. The way the insurance was calculated was looking at the insurance numbers from January 1st, because those were the numbers that we had actually in saying who picked what plan. Because people had the opportunity, even though it was an 18-month plan, they could re-elect a new plan on December 31st, and now they're going to re-elect another one on June 30th. Looking at those numbers, the increase that would have happened for the last 6 months of the year weren't correctly calculated in, and those were carried forward. So we changed all of those, raising the expenses to reflect that. And we sent that version to the state. There were also some issues with the way that the actual negotiations had gone with a couple of the unions and what rates were going to be paid for different positions in those unions, and all of those were updated. And those, all the step increases that go with all the unions carried forward for the next 5 years. Then after we sent that in, then we found out that our insurance rates, instead of going up the projected 8%, went up only 3%. So then we put the 3% in, and it happened to bring it all back down to about where it was before. So those numbers are pretty close to being the same. Some of the things we did that's a little different. Some departments have steps for different positions in that department. And they are paid by how much those positions step up. So a good example is the police department. You may hire somebody as a police officer certified. After they're here 1 year, they can become a patrolman 1, then a patrolman 2, then a patrolman 3, on and on up to patrol 5s. Since we're tracking individual people and actual employees and what all of their pay is, and we're not saying on average there would be, 10 patrol 1s and 7 patrol 2s and 5 patrol 3s. What ends up happening is you actually, because you're looking at a person, everybody at the end of 5 years is a patrol 5. So we had to recalculate that because we're tracking people and not actually the number of positions, not retiring people out. So those changed some of the personnel keys, changed some of the insurance keys, and then we adjusted the capital plan accordingly. Once we got all the corrected numbers in and verified, then we talked, and the mayor and I worked through and came up with what we wanted the capital plan to look like. Some variances there, most everything that was in there is there. Some things got moved around for ADA access at some facilities. But we ended up with $1,561,008. Balance carried forward December 2026 to January 2027. That meets our requirement for having our January expenses carried forward. Mostly what's here and what's changed is more information. So, is there any questions, or anybody want more detail?
Anyone have any questions? Thank you, Mr. Stiff.
Can I make a comment? It's the best it's the best one we've had yet.
It really is.
It's the best one. There was so much more time put into this one, so much more effort, so much more feedback and guidance on it. It is the best one we've done.
Thank you, Mr. Shire. Mr. Brady.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say thank you for the time, because I know you talked about how much time it takes. I appreciate you all for putting the time in here and giving us such a great honor.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Anyone else? We have a motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Brady, to suspend the rules and have all three readings. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present voting aye, the motion passes. May we have all three readings, please?
Ordinance approving the Sixth Amendment to the detailed financial plan for the City of Norwood and declaring an emergency. Ordinance approving the Sixth Amendment to the detailed financial plan for the City of Norwood and declaring an emergency. Ordinance approving the Sixth Amendment to the detailed financial plan for the City of Norwood and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Boyce. Mr. Thompson.
Move we pass the ordinance.
Motion by Mr. Thompson to pass the ordinance. Mrs. Winterbauer.
Second?
Second by Mrs. Winterbauer. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present voting aye, the ordinance passes. Moving on to item L2. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $7,200,000 of special obligation development refunding bonds, Series 2022, University Station project of the City of Norwood, Ohio, for the purpose of refunding its outstanding special obligation development revenue bonds, Series 2013, University Station project, authorizing the execution and delivering of a trust agreement to secure such bonds, authorizing execution and delivery of a bond placement agreement, authorizing the execution and delivery of an escrow deposit agreement, authorizing and approving related matters, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, we've got bond counsel present tonight. I'm going to ask that he be allowed to give a little background before.
Good evening, and as usual, I apologize for the length of the time. The comments are blank. So in a nutshell, what we're doing is there were bonds that were issued back in 2013 to finance some public infrastructure improvements at the University Station project. Some people call it Dana Mont, but typically known as the University Station project. And so those bonds were secured by TIF revenues. The TIF revenues are basically the payments in lieu of tax that the city is basically allowed to generate by, for this purpose, by exempting the property from tax, requiring the property owners to pay payments in lieu of tax. Those payments in lieu of tax are available to pay for the cost of public infrastructure improvements that benefit the private improvements that are constructed. And then in this case, we borrowed money against those revenues to be paid back at a future date from the revenues as they're generated by the private improvements. So those bonds that were issued back in 2013, there's a period usually when you're not allowed to refinance them. We're getting not there, but close to that time when we can refinance them at a lower rate. So I can give you some detail if you like, but basically what we're authorizing here is the issuance of new bonds at a lower interest rate. We'll use the proceeds of those new bonds to pay off the old bonds. Then we'll be obligated to pay for the new bonds, but we'll have a lower financial obligation. The interest rate will be lowered. We won't be extending the term of the bonds or anything, but the net effect will basically be some savings in that we'll have additional TIF revenues in the future to potentially pay for additional public infrastructure improvements up in that area. And so some of the, again, I won't get into too much detail unless you have specific questions about it, but like I said, the existing bonds aren't able to be repaid for another, call it 18 months. And so what we're doing is that we'll borrow the money by selling the new bonds. We'll put those proceeds from the new bonds sale into an escrow account. Then when those 2013 bonds are able to be repaid, the funds in that escrow account will then be used to repay the old bonds. Then we'll just have outstanding the new debt. And I know that some questions that commonly come up are, is there any financial risk on the part of the city? There is not. As I said, the bonds are payable solely from those TIF revenues, those payments in lieu of tax that are generated at that project site. And some of the other documentation authorized in there is, an amendment to an existing agreement whereby if there were to be a shortfall in those TIF revenues, the city would not be obligated. It would be the property owners are then obligated to make additional payments so that that debt can be repaid. That's kind of the broad strokes of what we're authorizing here. This is just a first reading, so we do anticipate coming back in about 3 weeks if you have a chance to think about it, have additional questions, but obviously also able to answer any questions you may have now. Andy Brossard is here. He's sort of on the financial side of things, so if you have questions about the numbers behind this or the financial reasons for doing this transaction, he can give
Just
you
for the record, could
Yes, sir.
we get your name?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm Patrick Woodside. I'm an attorney at Frost Brown Todd, and I serve as the city's bond counsel.
Thank you.
Evening, Andy Brossart with Bradley Payne Advisors. We've served as the municipal advisor to the city. I told Pat not to steal all the good stuff, so it was good. He didn't. So just to reset the stage a little bit, if you recall last year, we did 2 refundings, and we did that through the Port Authority. And we did that through the Port Authority for some reasons that made sense then. And then we did another new financing, the PLK deal, through the Port Authority as well, for some other economic benefits. We decided to stay this one with the city the way it was originally constructed, really to save some money on issuance costs and speed to the market. And so as interest rates were going up, we were trying to get that rate locked as fast as we could, which we did through term sheet, and that's been signed and executed. So the bonds that were issued in 2013 were originally issued for a little over $7,050,000. So far to date, current outstanding is $6,445,000. The reissuance amount is going to go up a little bit above that. So we're going to be issuing $6,675,000 of bonds. Again, revenue bonds, as Pat laid out, secured by the TIF revenues. The old bonds were outstanding at 6 to 7% interest rates. Interesting fact, when we first got engaged with the city, we were looking at some of the old issues, and the city didn't have the ability to refinance this debt. And so it was at the consent of the developer. And so as some other items needed to be requested down in that area, the city was able to get into the agreement that said, okay, if you want this, we want you to consent to letting us refinance the bonds whenever we want. And so that was a huge step for the city to get that taken care of. The interest rates we've got locked in right now are at a 4.96, and so a little bit higher than what we liked, but still the savings metrics are there, and we have the ability actually in 2.5 years, come back and do another refinancing if we like. So if the rates change and come back down, we'll have the ability to go back and save some money. Those rates are up probably about 1.5% from some of the rates we saw in the past, and so that's why we want to make sure we had that flexibility still in the future to call the bonds if we chose to. And we talked about some of those metrics. We typically look at these deals at a 3 to 5% savings range in our world. This comes out to 7.98%, and that's after cost of issuance is factored out as well. So it's net present value about $502,000 in total savings, roughly about $35,000 a year in savings. And so this TIF has performed very well. And given the other housing unit that came online and started producing taxes this year, along with the refinancing on an annual basis, we're probably going to be looking about almost $300,000 a year in free cash flow for other projects. So that's an outstanding win for the city. It's worked the way it was supposed to, and And so we got first reading, and then we'll move along to a closing. We have to close the bonds by July 6th, so that interest rate goes away. And literally after we sign the term sheet, I think the next day interest rates went up like 30 basis points and continue to go up. So the investor's good, but they're locked in at this point in time as long as we close by that July 6th date, which we seem to be on track to do. Any questions related to?
Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Mr. President. So, Mr. Brazel, so the life of this TIF, is it stay with the property? Is it indefinite? I want to say we talked about this. Is it 30 years?
This one was a 30-year TIF.
30 years.
Yeah, and so the final collection right now is 2042.
Okay.
And so the bonds actually, the way it's working out, we're actually shortening the life of the bond by 1 year. If you recall, on the Rookwood TIF district, City Council extended that another 30 years because it hit a metric that allowed for that to happen. We're not at that yet in this district. We're at, I think, $1,290,000, $1,300,000 in gross collections. So once that happens, you'll have the consideration to do that again there if you so choose.
Once it goes over 1.5.
1.5, yeah.
When it goes over 1.5 million, there's a little sort of trigger that allows you to extend it. If you want, we'd obviously come back to council to consider that.
With full school district reimbursement at that point in time for the new life of the TIF, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Braden. Anyone else?
Yes, ma'am.
So I know there's the Rookwood TIF and this TIF. Are there any other TIFs within the city of Norwood that are currently active? Or are those the only two?
Yes, in fact, we can get you a sheet. We've laid out sort of a grid of all the TIFs that are outstanding. So we've got, I should know this by heart, we've got the Cornerstone, which we refinanced last year. We've got Linden Point and Paycor, sort of together but separate. We have Rookwood. We have this TIF district. We have the PLK TIF district, and I think I'm forgetting one. Oh, yeah, right across the street, Central
Yeah.
Park. That's right.
Awesome, thank you.
All doing well. PLK has not obviously produced any revenues yet, but we'll hear probably in about 2 years.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Franzen. Anyone else? Thank you, gentlemen.
Welcome.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Just, I know that they've asked for one reading tonight. I'm going to ask the council to do 2 readings tonight in case we don't have enough members at the next council meeting to suspend the rule.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mrs. Franzen?
Thank you for that, Mr. Moore. Thanks for the clarification. In that case, I would love to have suspend the rules and have 2 readings of this ordinance tonight, please.
Motion by Mrs. Franzen. Mrs. Hoover.
I'll second that.
Second by Mrs. Hoover. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present, voting aye. The motion passes. May we have the first and second reading?
An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $7,200,000 of special obligation development refunding bonds, Series 2022 University Station Project of the City of Norwood, Ohio, for the purpose of refunding its outstanding special obligation development revenue bond, Series 2013 University Station Project, authorizing the execution and delivery of a trust agreement to secure such bonds, authorizing the execution and delivery of a bond placement agreement, authorizing the execution and delivery of an escrow deposit agreement, authorizing and approving related matters, and declaring an emergency. I'm going to take a breath before the second reading. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $7,200,000 of special obligation development refunding bond, Series 2022 University Station Project of the City of Norwood, Ohio, for the purpose of refunding its outstanding special obligation development revenue bonds, Series 2013 University Station Project, authorizing the execution and delivery of a trust agreement to secure such bonds, authorizing the execution and delivery of a bond placement agreement, authorizing the execution of a deposit agreement, authorizing and approving related matters, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Royce. Ms. Spring? We'll move on to item L3. Resolution designating June 19th, 2022 as Juneteenth Independence Day in the City of Norwood. Mrs. Hoover.
I move that we suspend the rules and have all three readings, the first in its entirety.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoover.
Sorry, Alexis.
Mr. Braden. Second by Mr. Braden. The motion to suspend the rules and have all three readings, the first in its entirety. Motion by Mr. Hoover, second by Mr. Braden. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present voting aye, the motion passes. May we have all three readings?
Yes. First reading. Resolution designating June 19th, 2022 as Juneteenth Independence Day in the city of Norwood. Whereas at the end of the Civil War, news of the end of slavery did not reach the frontier areas of the United States, in particular the state of Texas and other southwestern states, until months after the war's conclusion. More than 2.5 years after President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863. And whereas on June 19th, 1865, Union soldiers, led by Major General Gordon Granger, arrived in Galveston, Texas, with news that the Civil War had ended and that the enslaved were free. And whereas African Americans who had been slaves in the Southwest celebrated June 19th, commonly known as Juneteenth Independence Day, as inspiration and encouragement for future generations. And whereas African Americans from the Southwest have continued the tradition of observing Juneteenth Independence Day for over 150 years. And whereas 45 states and the District of Columbia have designated Juneteenth Independence Day as a special day of observance and recognition of the emancipation of all slaves in the United States. And whereas Juneteenth Independence Day celebrations have been held to honor African American freedom while encouraging self-development and respect for all cultures. And whereas the faith and strength of character demonstrated by former slaves and the descendants of former slaves remain an example for all people of the United States, regardless of background, religion, or race. And whereas slavery was not officially abolished until the ratification of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States in December 1865. And whereas over the course of its history, the United States has grown into a symbol of democracy and freedom around the world. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Norwood, Ohio, Section 1, the Council of the City of Norwood hereby 1, acknowledges that all people in the city of Norwood are the recipients of the wealth of history provided by Black culture. 2, recognizes the importance of Juneteenth as an opportunity to reflect on the complex history of the United States, including the city of Norwood, while remaining hopeful and confident about the path ahead. 3, acknowledges the significance of Juneteenth as an important opportunity to commemorate the tremendous contributions of African Americans to the history of the United States, including the city of Norwood. 4, encourages the celebration of Juneteenth to provide a continuing opportunity for all people in the city of Norwood to learn from the past and understand the experiences that have shaped the United States. 5, agrees that while the United States began as a divided country, and the United States must honor the contribution of all pioneers. Contribution of all pioneers in the United States who have helped to ensure the legacy of the great United States. And B, move forward with purpose, united tirelessly as a nation indivisible with liberty and justice for all. Do we need to read that part? Section 2, Council hereby declares June 19th, 2022 to be Juneteenth Independence Day in Norwood, Ohio, to encourage our residents to learn about Black history as it is all of our history. Do I need this?
Just the top.
Okay, sorry, twice. Resolution designating June 19th, 2022 as Juneteenth Independence Day in the city of Norwood. Resolution designating June 19th, 2022 as Juneteenth Independence Day in the city of Norwood.
Thank you, Ms. Weiss. Mr. Thompson.
I would move that we pass the resolution.
Motion by Mr. Thompson to pass the resolution. Mr. Kelch.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kelch. Any further discussion? Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Virginia Patterson for bringing this to us. She originally contacted some of us, I think, in December about this. And so it's been a long time coming. Mrs. Hoover also helped a lot in getting this put together. And so just thank you all for contributing to this and bringing it to our attention. I'll say, like, people, we do lots of not lots, but some resolutions honoring different things and different times. And people watching might wonder why we do this sometimes. Personally, I grew up in a town of 2,000 people and farther south than here. And I'm somewhat ashamed to admit that I didn't know Juneteenth was a thing until I was well into my adulthood. So any chance that we have to spread this kind of information and to bring attention to these kind of things is a good thing, and I'm glad that we do it.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Anyone else? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present voting aye, the resolution passes. Moving on to item L4, resolution declaring June 2022 to be Pride Month in the city of Norwood. Mr. Thompson.
Move we have, or suspend the rules and have all three readings of this resolution with the first in its entirety, please.
Motion by Mr. Thompson to suspend the rules and have the first reading in its entirety. May I have a second? Mrs. Hoover.
I second.
Second by Mrs. Hoover. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Sorry. Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present voting aye, the motion passes. Mrs. White.
Resolution declaring June 2022 to be Pride Month in the city of Norwood. Whereas Norwood is home to a diverse and inclusive community, and whereas individuals who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer, LGBTQ, include people from all faiths, races, national origins, socioeconomic statuses, education levels, and political beliefs. And whereas LGBTQ people in the United States have made and continue to make vital contributions to the United States and to the world in every aspect, including in the fields of education, law, health, business, science, research, economic development, architecture, law enforcement, healthcare, fashion, sports, government, military, music, film, politics, technology, literature, and civil rights. And whereas on June 26, 2015, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled in Obergefell v. Hodges, 135, Supreme Court, 2584, that same-sex couples have a constitutional right to marry, and acknowledge that no union is more profound than marriage, for it embodies the highest ideals of love, fidelity, devotion, sacrifice, and family. And whereas LGBTQ people in the United States have fought for equal treatment, dignity, and respect, and whereas LGBTQ people in the United States have achieved significant milestones ensuring that future generations of LGBTQ people in the United States will enjoy a more equal and just society, now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Norwood, State of Ohio, that Section 1, the City of Norwood declares June 2022 as Pride Month to provide an opportunity for our residents to learn about the discrimination and inequality that the LGBTQ community has experienced and continues to experience, and to celebrate the contributions of the LGBTQ community. Resolution declaring June 2022 to be Pride Month in the City of Norwood. Resolution declaring June 2022 to be Pride Month in the City of Norwood.
Thank you, Ms. Mercer.
Thank you.
Mrs. Franzen.
I move we pass the resolution.
Motion by Mrs. Franzen to pass the resolution. Mrs. Winterbauer.
I second.
Second by Mrs. Winterbauer. Any further discussion? Mrs. Franzen.
I also wanted to recognize a person last year who organized a Pride Walk on Wasson Way. Her name on Facebook is Sam JB. I do not know her actual name. I met her very briefly that day, but I don't know if she plans to celebrate that again. It was not an official city event, but it was a fun day. I enjoyed being there. A lot of great families and Norwood residents, as well as people from the surrounding community, standing together and having a fun day. Kind of like the Bengals March, but with more rainbows. So if that happens again, if I hear about it, I'll share it with council probably next time.
Thank you, Mrs. Franzen. Anyone else? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen.
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Kelch.
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Brady.
Yes, ma'am.
All members present, voting aye, the resolution passes. Moving on to item M, administrative reports. Mayor Schneider.
Thank you, President Mayor. A lot of different organizational meetings, a lot of behind-the-scenes work trying to bring people together to make sure that we're moving in the right direction at all times. Plans are being made for all sorts of improvements, and at City Hall it seems like there's constantly some collaboration with different organizations and different groups, and we're trying to bring people in and engage people. So it's been really a busy spring. Multiple proclamation presentations. We had a police officer that was our school resource officer, media consultant who Ron Murphy retired, so there was a proclamation and then a community celebration for sort of all the good that he's done in the community. And, part of that I say, well, it's just celebrating all the good work that he's done, but it's also sort of tying him in to all the good work that he will do and making sure he realizes, like, stick around. He'll stick around. We've got him, I think. So then we also had the Norwood Knights of Columbus had their Blue Coat Awards here recently, where they recognize a firefighter and a police officer of the year. Police officer was Sergeant Vickers, and then the firefighter was Bobby Schlachter, who's a driver ATO with the fire department. Both of them were recognized. Then Sunday, there was the Court of Honor for American Heritage Girls. Catherine Angelo received the Stars and Stripes, which is the highest you can go with the American Heritage Girls. It was really a neat celebration that they had, and families there, young children, young adults, a lot of core values that we all stand for, which is really important. As they talked about it, they're talking about their country and community and all the community service that goes on, and family and God. And they are raising those children and helping them be better all the time. And it was American Heritage Girls is a good organization. And then upcoming is an Eagle Badge Court of Honor for Ian Davis. A lot of us know Ian Davis. He's been involved in so many different things. So that's coming up not this weekend, but next weekend. I did a taste testing. It's terrible. I got invited to a taste testing for UDF's first new ice cream in 40 years, the Main Avenue ice cream that they brought out. They've got all sorts of different flavors, and I could tell you I tried a bunch of them. They were really good, every one of them. There wasn't one that I spit out. This wasn't like a wine tasting. They're like pouring us to, no, we didn't do any of that. But I got to do that with Brad Lendner, and that was really a neat event. So let's see, this weekend, there's a lot going on this weekend, right? Saturday is the 50th anniversary celebration at Waterworks Pool. That's sort of the new ribbon cutting reopening of the swim pool. A lot of new changes there. So you definitely want to be there. If you're sticking around this weekend, carve out a little bit of time for some city functions, because there's quite a few going on. The 50th anniversary celebration, J.B. Worth Pool's been around for 50 years. And in some areas, it's showing its age, but in other areas, it looks great, and it's going to be an absolutely great summer at the pool. That's on Saturday. On Sunday, they're having Sundays on Sunday. So at 12 noon at the pool, they're having, I think it's every Sunday, they're planning on having Sundays there. So you might want to stop by for that, right around 12 to 1, and then you can go. And then Memorial Day, there's always the Memorial Day celebration at Victory Park that the VFW puts on. That is at 12 noon. We'd like to have a good showing there, a good crowd. And I know a lot of people travel, and it's Memorial Day weekend, and there's a lot going on. But if you can make it, it's a great service that they put on each year at Victory Park by the veterans. So I talked a little bit about all the organizational meetings. We have a meeting, a group of people had a meeting to talk about 561, which is the state route running through. It's basically Smith and Carthage is 561. 562, which is the Norwood Lateral. When I say 562, I'm talking Ohio State Route 562. And then 22 and 3 is Montgomery Road. And all of those are scheduled to be resurfaced in the next few years. It's for Montgomery Road, it's been more than 20 years. I couldn't tell you how long ago it was for 561, and we know the lateral gets so much traffic and so much travel that it needs it.
So coordinating all of those with ODOT and with our engineering teams and making sure that we've got everything, and coordinating it with our Public Works Department and our Police Department, because as you look at the Norwood lateral, they're going to shut down the eastbound lane. Totally shut down both lanes shut down. They're doing bridge work. They've got to shut down both. They can't do it. They can't do one side. They can't do a contra lane. So it's going to be shut down eastbound for 6 weeks, probably more like 2 months or longer to do that work. And then once they finish that, they're going to shut down the westbound lane. So it's going to push all sorts of surface travel into the city of Norwood, and we're trying to coordinate that with them to make sure that it's not just a whole mess. We're going to make sure that 561, so if you jumped off at Smith Road, right? Smith Road is 561. If they do jump off there, they'll be able to run it up through the heart of Norwood, up Carthage to get through there. That's a state route, and that's going to be a detour route for some of these people. So we're going to make sure that's in good shape. We've got a lot to do on Montgomery Road. We've got all sorts of plans for Montgomery Road. And this, you have a small window to do these things, right? When they resurface, when ODOT, when the state comes in and says, we're going to pave this state route through your community, they don't do that every other year. They do it about every 20 years. It's been 20 years since Montgomery Road was, that doesn't surprise many people, but it's been a long time since Montgomery Road was really taken care of. The last time it was done in 3 phases. And it took about 6 or 8 years to get all 3 phases done. We don't want that. We want to push. We want the inconvenience hit us. Let's make it. Let's get it right, and let's have a beautiful Montgomery Road all the way through the city of Norwood. So, a lot of coordination with that. Andy Brossert was in here, and Andy Brossert with Municipal Advisors. We brought him on when I started. And one of the reasons was that as smart as Keith and Tim are as lawyers in our law department and working with these and working with the contracts, I really felt like we needed some more. We need a little bit more advice. I needed more advice on what are the right things to do. And you asked the right question. How many TIFs do we have in the city of Norwood? Andy's got a spreadsheet that he put together that outlines all of that and helps us understand it. For the city of Norwood, we don't have as many TIFs in place as other communities. If you look at Evendale or Blue Ash or some of these other more sophisticated communities, they've got a ton, absolutely a ton of TIFs going on, and they've got all sorts. And I don't know that it's good or bad for the city of Norwood. We've got a small amount of them, and it's we're able to handle them, but it does spur development, and that's one thing that you think about. But having somebody like Andy on board is important because he can really lay the stuff out. And anytime, if you guys have questions, he's available. He's our resource and a great resource at putting it in terms that we can understand. And Pat Woodside is a great lawyer and does a great job with bonds. But Pat is almost on this different level at times. As I talk to him, but Andy will put it right. He'll help you understand it even more. So utilize that resource if you're not sure about something as we move forward through this stuff. And I would hope that you would call him prior to the council meeting, get that information so it's not a question for you. And then the last part, I was absolutely serious. I think that this financial recovery plan is the best one that we've put together. And Jim does spend a ton of time on it. I've spent a lot of time with him. He utilizes a lot of different resources. We get a lot of really good guidance from the state auditor's office, and this is probably one of the best. It is the best that we've had. So don't forget, as always, when you approve the ordinance for this, we ask that you all stick around for a minute and sign this, the original copy that we have over there. So please stick around and make sure you sign that before you go. So that's about all. Anything else?
Thank you, Mayor Snyder. Anyone have any questions or comments for the mayor? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Moving on to item N, unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business? Mr. Kelch.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to talk a little bit about the Elm project we have going on, and I was able to meet with our guys at JMA, Mr. Godey, and then Clint Zerman, just kind of get an update. And there's some plans that have been sent to MSD to try to get their kind of okay on, since we will be pushing water out into their kind of resources. From that meeting, we're going to try to have a second meeting on June 20th, that we kind of meet up here just to talk about it, kind of see what we're getting from MSD, see what the next steps are going to be like. And if we need to change up our plan before we go on our town hall meeting that I'm gonna put on June 29th. And I'm looking to do that 7 PM at the community center or the rec. I'm gonna try to gauge within the next week, like how many people we should expect, see if we can utilize the new rec center or if we should just go with the community center down in the basement there, because that's quite a big space. The purpose of that is just gonna be to get residents in this area out there, especially some of the residents that are gonna be in the affected properties, to where this kind of water catch basin will go, and just kind of answer questions, even residents that aren't right around there that might be experiencing flooding in other parts of Norwood, just to kind of see what we're doing, just see how we're resolving this project, or even just come out and support it, or share, their stories or whatever. Pretty simple meeting. It's going to be Q&A. We're going to have some poster boards, kind of like back over here, where we're going to put some of the plans on there on easels where people can see them, and then kind of take some time before, after, and during to come up and walk around and check them out, so that way they can kind of get a better idea of what is going to happen. And then from there, we're going to be having some more meetings with our little brain trust back here. Not these guys, but us in that room. And just talking about, the next steps, easements to be signed, how that process looks, what's going to happen from there. If MSD doesn't like our plan, where do we go from there, and what do we do after that? So, and then we're going to continue after those meetings to have town halls. Get the information, put the information out, and then we're going to try to do that throughout the whole entire length of this project. Just keep everybody kind of in the loop on what's going on.
Thank you, Mr. Kelch. Thank you for that update. Any other unfinished business this evening? Mrs. Franzen?
Just a clarification for Mr. Kelch. What day was the town hall? Were you hoping to do it on?
We're going to do, looking for 6/29.
6/29, thank you. I had missed the date, thank you.
Yeah. And if I could add too, I'm going to be working with President Miracle and Lisa to try to get some of these letters sent out to some of the residents around there. And I'm going to be going out door to door myself to a lot of these places. So if anybody wants to help out, feel free. I'll get some of those dates to you within the next week or so.
Anyone else? Any other unfinished business? And we'll move on to new business. Mrs. Zuber.
I just have two items. One is the community council meeting will be held this Thursday at Hunter Park, which is on Dale Road. They're going to be doing a 6:30 grill with hot dogs, and then a meeting at 7. The schools will be there. Darren Hackworth, who's the city project manager, will be there talking about all the hundreds of projects he's got going on, as well as the police. They're calling it Popsicles in the Park. These are really fun, family-friendly. I see lots of council members there. So it's a good opportunity for the community to, have one-on-one time with council members if they so choose, as well as probably more importantly, just connecting with their neighbors. The second item is something I mentioned in the previous meeting. I want to encourage residents, council members, city employees to participate in the Greater Cincinnati Foundation's Racial Equity Matters program. They're doing registration now. It's not until August the 16th, but it's a 4-hour, it's called Groundwater. It is an introduction to racial equity work. And it's virtual, August the 16th, and again, it's through the Greater Cincinnati Foundation, and you can register through their website, which I can give you that. It's one of my 800 tabs. It's GCF, I think. Sorry, I got too many tabs open. It's a problem. Thank you, that's it. I'll send it to you later.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoover. Mrs. Franzen.
Just to add on to that, I'll also be we have some really nice mock-ups of some of the stuff that we talked about at the infrastructure meeting yesterday, with some improvements that we'd like to do for pedestrian safety on Montgomery Road between Elm Avenue and Mills. That's what we are focusing on with applying for grants from SORTA. So I'm going to be bringing those with us so people can take a look at them, ask questions, give input if there's things that they're wanting to see that they don't see on there.
Thank you, Mrs. Franzen. Anyone else? At our June 28th meeting, I will have a public hearing for the 2023 tax budget. Copies of the tax budget will be available 10 days prior to that in the clerk of council or the auditor's office. So we'll schedule a public hearing for June 28th to discuss the 2023 tax budget. Anyone else? We'll move on to item P, communications. P1, Victor Schneider, Mayor, regarding the Mayor's Court April fines. Ms. Royce.
I'm sorry. You just want me to read it? Mr. Ken Miracle, President, members of Norwood City Council, regarding Mayor's Court's fines. Dear Mr. President and council members, enclosed, please find the report for Norwood Mayor's Court for the month of April 2022. Should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. Sincerely, Victor Schneider, Mayor, City of Norwood.
Thank you, Ms. Royce. Mr. Thompson.
Move we receive and file the communication.
Motion by Mr. Thompson to receive and file the communication. May I have a second? Mrs. Franson.
I second.
Second by Mrs. Franson. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braid?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present, voting aye. The motion passes. Moving on to item P2, Keith Moore, Norwood Law Director, regarding the appointment of legal secretary.
Dear City Council members, first, thank you for recently passing the ordinance adjusting certain salary ranges with T.A. Brown's departure from the Law Department. For NORCOM, I am preparing to appoint Catherine Cornelius to the position of Legal Secretary / Paralegal. Her resume is attached. As you can see, she has roughly 20 years relevant experience among other qualifications. Section 3 of the ordinance provides that all positions will be hired at the lowest rate except when qualifications, expertise, and educational background dictate otherwise. Given Ms. Cornelius's qualifications and expertise, I'm requesting that council approve the terms of the attached draft order letter, which includes a starting salary of $45,000 and 80 hours of vacation time available during her first year. That salary is well within the salary range for this position. In addition, Ms. Cornelius has a vacation already scheduled for later this year, which she should not have to cancel. If you concur with me, please pass a motion receiving and filing this letter and approving her appointment in accordance with the terms contained in the attached offer letter. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Keith D. Moore, Law Director.
Thank you, Ms. Royce. Mr. Thompson.
Move that we receive and file the letter as well as approve her appointment in accordance with the terms contained within this offer letter.
Motion by Mr. Thompson. May I have a second? Mrs. Hoover.
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Hoover. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Kelch.
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Braid.
Yes, ma'am.
All members present, voting aye. The motion passes. Mr. Moore, we're going to wait till we get all the communication.
I would do, yeah, maybe somebody wants to do a motion to just receive and file Mr. Stith's letter as if read, and then move on to the executive session letter from Mr. Gary. Or we can do the executive session and come out and you guys can vote to receive and file the Mr. Stith letter. It's up to you.
Mr. Kelch.
Make a motion to receive and file the letter from Mr. Stith as read.
Motion by Mr. Kelch to receive and file the letter by Mr. Stith, the auditor, regarding the monthly financial report for March. Mr. Braden.
Second.
Second by Mr. Braden. Any discussion? This is item P4, by the way. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Kelch.
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Braden.
Yes.
All members present, voting aye. The motion passes. Mrs. Franson.
I'd like to make a motion for us to move into executive session in order to confer with an attorney concerning a dispute involving the city, council that are subject of pending or imminent court action under Ohio Revised Code 121.22, Section G, subsection 3.
Thank you, Mrs. Franzen. May I have a second? Mrs. Hoover.
I'll second.
Second, Mrs. Hoover.
Whatever fits you say.
Yes. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Brayton?
Yes, ma'am.
All members present, voting aye. We are in executive session.
No, we have to, it's the motion.
We're coming out of executive session. Moving on to item P3, communication, Tim Gary, Norwood Assistant Law Director, regarding the discussion of pending lawsuit. Ms. Royce.
Dear President and members of council, the Law Department asks you for some time to discuss the status of the pending lawsuit with the council during council's regular meeting this Tuesday, May 24th, 2022 at 7:30 PM with the city's outside counsel in this matter, Scott A. Solman. We would suggest that this discussion occur during executive session. Thank you sincerely, Timothy A. Gary, Jr., Assistant Law Director.
Thank you, Ms. Royce. Mr. Thompson.
Move to receive and file the letter.
And approve the settlement?
Oh, yes, and approve the settlement, sorry.
Motion by Mr. Thompson to receive and file the letter and to approve the settlement. May I have a second? Ms. Franzen.
I second.
Second by Ms. Franzen. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen.
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Kelch.
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Brady.
Yes, ma'am.
All members present voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you, Council.
Moving on to item R, adjournment. May I have a motion for adjournment? Mr. Kelch.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion by Mr. Kelch. May I have a second? Mrs. Winterbauer. Second. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen.
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Kelch.
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yep.
Mr. Brady.
Yes, ma'am.
All members present voting aye. We are adjourned.